Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage, on a beautiful Wednesday morning. It's chilly outside. Gonna go into the deep freeze for a couple days, and then by Sunday it should be warm again. That's what I'm hoping anyway. So today we're doing final assembly. I have to film in between my heater running because it's really noisy otherwise. So while the heater was running, I do what I normally do anyway. I get ready for my first operations, which is to put all the small parts in the case. At least that's how I'm going to do it today. There is no exact order as far as getting all the sub-assemblies ready. I always tell myself one of these days I'm going to have them all ready to go and then just chuck everything in the case. But I normally want the bench space, so I go ahead and just keep putting parts back in pretty much in the order I took them out. So while I was waiting for the heater to shut off, I put some liquid Teflon on my 1/8 pipe plug for the pressure tap on the side of the case. I'm pointing over here in case you can see it. And gently installed that. It's pipe thread. That means it doesn't go in flush. It just goes in until it's tight. Pipe threads seal on the threads, not on the head of the, well, if it was a bolt, you know what I'm saying. I wire wheeled in preparation of installing the linkage, where the seal rides, and where I had to lightly file where the rooster is when I removed it from the case so I didn't score the case up. We've covered that many times. I should say that this is the first transmission I've built in a long, long time that I haven't painted everything individually and installed all new external bolts. I like to do that because it looks nice. It's a lot of extra work. So last night before I went in the house, I did paint the front half of the pump, the part that shows, the tail housing, and the pan. The pan could have waited till I installed it because I'm going to paint the whole thing overall just flat black. But because it's such a nice original transmission and it's not, you know, a super expensive rebuild, I'm going to put all the stock bolts back in because this transmission is actually ashamed to even paint it, but they want it painted, so I'm going to use all the original pan bolts, pump bolts, everything, tail housing bolts. So I've laid those out. I take 30 seconds to a minute and lay them out in groups that they're going to go in the transmission as. Otherwise, I'm going to spend the rest of the day picking through trying to get a full set. It's easy to identify the short 5/16 bolts, the ones that go inside and have spent their lives inside the case, and the ones that have been outside. So I separate those because I don't want to mix them up and put dirty bolts inside. I dug out my gasket set and have taken everything out of the package. You're going to be digging around anyway, just get it out now, with the exception of the external, the boot. In this case, I'll need the dipstick O-ring, and I will need the O-ring for the speedometer, so I should have gone ahead and opened that one up too, but the other ones I open up. And starting with the electrical pass-through, other than the dipstick O-ring that is in that package, there's only 3 other similarly sized O-rings in the kit, so it's pretty easy to match it up, and 2 of them look identical, because they are, and 1 is slightly bigger. The slightly bigger one goes on the filter tube into the case, and the electrical pass-through and the modulator, both the bores in the case are 0.875-ish, 7/8, so they take the same O-ring. You can match it up with the old one, but the old one's all stretched out, so that might lead you astray. But when you install the O-ring and you look at it in the horizontal profile, the O-ring is prouder than the rest, then you probably got it right. And I have special tools to install the linkage seal, but I just use my snap-on 1/2-inch socket that I've installed 1,000 seals with, and I'm gentle with it. But it's already on the bench, and I just use it out of habit. I buy in bulk just gasket sets that does come with the hard linkage seal, but it does not come with the front and rear seals. I buy those in bulk wherever I can find them. It's a lot, I wouldn't say inexpensive, but I think that's the thriftier way to buy it. And I have a better say as to what brand seal I'm getting for the external seals. The reason I painted the front pump and the tail housing already is because I don't want to have to avoid getting paint on these after I've installed them. If I put the whole transmission together raw, then you gotta, I think it looks bad when you have paint on your seals. So despite the fact that I'm just gonna overall spray it when I'm done, I still care what it looks like. That's just me. So the first step is I'm gonna put all the small parts in the case. I mentioned that. Should talk about my outfit because a few people commented on the parts washer behind me and the smell that it has. And no question, if you get any of that on your clothes and you don't notice it until you go back in the house, it has a smell. Now this is Tractor Supply solvent. And I also learned that despite having a 15-gallon drum, I only put 5 gallons in it. That way I have a spare 5 gallons so it stays cleaner. And should that drum that's now 30 years old spring a leak, I've only lost 5 gallons instead of 15. So I don't anticipate it leaking, but you never know. For years, well, even now the paint is flaking off it. It's still bare metal underneath, but inside I don't know if there's water trapped in there. It could be leaking or rusting from the inside out. So the rest of my outfit today, I took off my shop coat because I want a little more mobility. And I don't want to soak that with solvent because I do wear that back and forth to the house. So I got my old eBay shop shirt with somebody else's name on it. It's big enough that I have my sweatshirt underneath. I rolled my cuffs up. So this is just glove and this shirt that I don't care if it smells because it's going to stay out here in the garage. So that's that. This transmission I stripped in a video a week or so ago. It's a rare case. Case again. It is from a 30,000 mile-ish 68 Impala. And there's nothing wrong with this transmission. I could literally put a seal kit in it, put it back together completely stock, and it would probably go another 40 years, 50 years, whatever. But it is getting an LS swap, a crate motor, and I'm going to do, by request, some modifications. Some I would do normally because the customer has no idea what goes on and what modifications would be normal. And others are, you know, requests. They want it to shift a little firmer, potentially handle a little more power. So to accomplish that, I am going to put the roller bearing in the bottom of the case. Going back to the theme of this being a very low mileage transmission, it didn't even need a pump bushing. And I say you change that, absolutely change that every time. And I am going to change it. I already knocked it out and then I looked at it and said, wow, it looks like the brand new ones. Every bushing in this transmission is the same way, but not daring to just knock these case bushing forward enough to kind of retain the bearing. That's another one that I pretty much change every time. So, and it's completely selective. We've had this conversation before. I can't sit here and say every transmission I take apart is getting all new bushings because that's just silly. If you notice the black FTI transmission that was in the background when I was talking about the TH400, that transmission has a handful of runs on it. It's here for a bunch of modifications. Am I just supposed to arbitrarily put a set of bushings in it? No. It's case by case, piece by piece. That's the way I work anyway. So, and always erring on the safe side. If it looks messed up, you change it. So it's getting a roller thrust bearing. I've already put the small pieces in the case. I always make sure park works like it should. You could put the guide in upside down physically, but it would not work. And you can watch the parking pawl working. So I put the nail in. Don't forget that. I do not bend them. I'm against bending nails. I'm just disciplined enough not to flip the case upside down. If I do, I expect it to fall out because it will absolutely, without the pump in it, fall out. That's just the way it's built, but I don't bend them. The next in order of operations is the lower unit. We're going to drop that in. First thing you need to do is service the center support, because as soon as you start assembling the lower unit, you're going to be looking for that, and you haven't serviced the piston yet. So my stock seals, hard as a rock, those go in the trash. The intermediate apply piston seals are different than the forward and direct drums, which are identical to each other. So it's easy to spot in your pile of parts. which ones you need. Another choice, you make a lot of choices assembling a transmission based on, you know, best practices and whatnot, but this is a steel sealing ring transmission. It's only been run 30,000 miles with the steel rings, and I'm going to leave the second one down off because I'm going to dual feed the direct drum. But I'm not swapping to Teflon. I'm going to put a horseshoe shim under the stock pressure regulator and drill a couple holes in the valve body. This is a completely automatic shifting, warmed over transmission. I'm going to let the steel rings lie. There's no reason I can think of to, you know, swap over to Teflon in this particular application. You can, as long as your surfaces that the steel rings have been running on are acceptable. That is a concern because if you buy, for instance, your trans brake valve body, if this was getting one, it specifically says to use Teflon sealing rings. Therefore, you have to make sure all your hard parts are absolutely machined perfect. In this case, I'm going to give myself a holiday and use the massive pile of steel rings I have that come in pretty much every kit if you buy the master kit. So I have quite an arsenal, and that's what I'm going to use. My center support is 370 thousandths thick. It's the thick one, so I don't need a fretting ring that goes in the case where this would sit down on it to protect the case. This was before that, so it's going to go back in just like it was. The stock band, rear band, is perfect. If you're careful, you can maneuver it down into the case. It has two lugs that you kind of set down into the void and rotate it up in. And then I take my screwdriver up through the hole while holding the band, and I put it in a comfortable neutral spot. And when I release the screwdriver, it will sit right there. And when I put the lower unit down, it won't interfere. If you put it down crooked, you're gonna hang up on the rear band. Now it's time to put in the intermediate apply piston. I've installed my seals, pushed them around, make sure they're completely comfortable in the groove. I'm hoping this is on camera. Your only concern here is the spring pockets have to match the indentations in the center support. Actual orientation doesn't matter, so I just kind of line it up. I'm lucky today. I have my Kentmore J tool protecting the inner and the outer. Because you can actually see the side of the seal, you could use your thumb, but I'm going to use a lip wizard, so I'm just going to line up the spring pockets. The center tool is already doing its job. Again, you could work this around with your finger. It gets kind of tight, and obviously I have a ton of petroleum jelly on it, but now I'm just going to roll this around with a little downward pressure. I also lube the bore of the center support because why not? It's already dropping down. Sometimes your tool actually gets in the way, so I'm going to pull the tool out. And we're there. Make sure it's centered in the spring pocket. Take that tool off. We're done with those for today because they only fit the center support. My stomach's growling, if you heard that. And then put the one spring in each location. You have 4 choices, so I just make sure it's in the same one. And the only thing hard about putting in the spring retainer is I usually pinch my glove. So I'm usually pretty careful. You can just do this by hand. Get my little screwdriver. Start one side underneath without getting my glove, which we'll see if I can do it. Yep. Almost there. There. Center support, ready for assembly. I've already slipped down that rabbit hole of showing way more detail than I planned on, but I'm having fun. I'm not getting much done, but hey, here we are. It seems odd to me to be putting like the silencer band back in because typically I throw that stuff away. This is a 1968 transmission, but now is a good time if you're putting an aftermarket billet forward hub in to make sure it fits your main shaft, because there are some early shafts that are different. Most of them are the same. This one fits the normal. I could put a billet forward hub. I'm not going to, but the spline here is correct. The early Sun Tube and Sun Gear have two master splines with lube holes on either side. So as long as you put the chamfered end down, the flat side of the Sun Gear up, and line the spline up properly, like that, your lube holes are gonna work. In the later years, you could put this 360 degrees and there's a groove cut all the way around for lube, but I still like to line the hole up, right or wrong. That's just me. The fact that we put a rear roller thrust bearing in frees up these parts here. This spacer, which is selective for rear end play, we don't need anymore, but the thrust washer is the same dimension as the plastic one that goes here. So we're going to throw that away and replace it with the one we took out. Just upgrading a plastic thrust washer to a metal one, free of charge. So now I'm going to complete the assembly of the lower unit and lower it in place. Also worth noting, we're all familiar with the beveled snap ring that's going to hold the center support in, along with the center support bolt, and the bevel goes up towards the pump. But on the back side, holding the output shaft in on the early lower units, that snap ring is beveled as well, and the bevel goes toward the back of the transmission. Caught my glove there for a second. Make sure your thrust washer, plastic or metal, is still on the back of the center support. This should freewheel to the left, lock to the right. That's ready for install. I have my lower unit ready. I put on my J-tool, and at the end of the video I'll tell you the part number for this. I'll actually look it up for you because I know you don't have Google, and I can't read it on the particular tool. And the same for the lifter. I'm probably not going to tell you because it has multiple pieces, so that sounds like a pain. But as I mentioned in other videos, good old David Nod, he has a YouTube channel. I've referenced it before. He sells a different style lifter that also works fantastic. This was closest to my hand, but, well, let me show you. He makes this handle, also works very nice. Actually works better on aftermarket, the 300M main shafts, where the J-tool is too tight. So you can use a marker, or in this case I just scratch with my pocket screwdriver a little line that lines up the center support bolt hole so I know where to line it up in the case. I have put my shim in the bottom of the case. For end play, I'm starting with a 10 thousandths, and I'm probably going to nail it with that, anywhere between 10 and 15 thousandths. This being a street transmission, 10 is probably going to do it. And the bearing I put in black side down. It has a black and a silver side. I went black side down. In an aftermarket reed case, they're black side up. They have specific instructions and they want black side up. Me, I put black side down. I think it feels better. And obviously it works good because I've been doing it for a long time. So, last check, make sure I got everything in there that I want. Make sure the tool's locked on. I've only ever dropped one and it was on camera, and I'd been thrashing trying to get it out of the case because it was full of rust. Now when I pick this up, it's going to want to spin. That's why I put a mark on it. It's heavy, but not uncontrollably heavy. And if you're gentle, you won't knock it apart. And it will fall right down in. Take the tool off. Now, I won't bore you, I'm going to put the bolt in and the snap ring, and then we'll check the end play real quick. If you want a quick hint, if you successfully put the snap ring in and tighten the bolt and the rear output shaft still turns, you're probably close. I put the gap of the beveled snap ring at 9 o'clock. There's a void over here in the case, and that's where we have it. I tightened up the beautiful museum quality gold center support bolt. Everything on this transmission is absolutely fantastic. And now you can get completely lost on setting up a dial indicator and everything else, but right there through the hole, I'm looking at the bearing and the shim, and when I go like this, I can see the slightest gap. But again, we're running the bearing. We don't want it to clunk back and forth, but I have a slightest amount for growth, and we're good. If you want to go ahead and measure it, it's almost immeasurable. There goes my heater, so I guess we're done for now. I gotta be honest with you, when I woke up this morning, I wasn't sure what I was gonna film, but I promised I'd do some and make a video of it, and now I've gone more in depth than I expected, but I'm trying to just show different angles and different things. I'm going to continue, and I guess my plan now, I'm halfway through the build here, is I don't know if I'll get back out this afternoon because it's early release day. The school bus is going to be here in a minute, and I'll spend the afternoon with my son. But probably tonight I'm going to come out, and tomorrow, and I'll work on the sub-assemblies and try to make sense out of the second half of the build. Even though it's slowing me down, I'm committed at this point. Now, I never thought it through that fatal afternoon or lunchtime when I decided I was going to come back out in the shop and start a YouTube channel. But one of the most rewarding things is absolutely helping people, and there's nothing more fulfilling, and I never expected this, when somebody sends you a message and say, hey, you gave me the courage to try to fix the transmission or whatever we're talking about. Usually it's transmission related. And I'm going to maintain my original thought, I've probably said it many times, that if you're mechanical and you can rebuild a carburetor or change brakes, you can rebuild a transmission. It's as simple as putting everything back where it was and having the sense to find the information you need in the book. Don't guess. If it feels wrong, it probably is. If you're not confident about how something goes together, this book is the Bible, one of, and you need it. Now, I promised you the Kentmore J-tool numbers. They're in the back of the book. Now, I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot. If people commented on the video, that helps the YouTube algorithm. So does a like and certainly a subscribe, hint, hint. But most people will go out of their way and find other ways to contact me to ask me what the part number for that tool is. And you should have this book if you're going to rebuild the Turbo 400, or later called the 3L80. And everything you need to know tool-wise is right there in the back. And also the David Nod that I mentioned. His YouTube channel is Naughty Dave, N-A-U-D-Y, not the naughty like you're thinking, N-A-U-D-Y, which is how his, that last name is Nod. Makes sense, kind of catchy. And if you send him a message on the channel, he'll hook you up somehow, and he makes tools for pressure testing, and he makes the lifting device. I know he's working, and he's actually made, I'm pointing, I hope you can see it, these outer seal installer for the forward and direct drums. He made one for himself. He may never make another one, but anyway, I'm going to close out this video and say thank you for watching, and probably tomorrow we'll revisit the remaining steps. So have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.